So before we start the presentation, I just want to mention two things. And firstly, I just want to make sure that you understand that this was not intended to be an educational presentation. It's only an inspirational presentation. I want to pinpoint certain aspects I think are important of this concept between straight stream and fog for interior operations, which I find to be most interesting, or as I see most needed for people to understand. It's not a comprehensive look on all the aspects of choosing between a fog and a straight stream during interior operations. Secondly, this presentation was built with the target audience in mind, which is the European Fire Service, which is predominantly driven toward use fog inside a structure. It is not built for people that use straight stream as a norm, which means that the story I built to convey my message is not built for you if you're using straight streams. Now, if you don't like the story and how I construct it, please do watch the entire video before you start writing angry comments to me. If you have angry comments after the presentation, it's fine, but at least watch the whole presentation in that case. Other than that, I hope you enjoy it. Have a good day. I'm supposed to talk about straight stream versus gas cooling, which is a pretty fun topic, right? And when we talk to IFIW, one of the non-negotiables is like one of the most foundational things we do is to cool smoke. And of course, it's interesting that we have so massive differences in how we look at cooling smoke, and what is good smoke cooling and what is bad smoke cooling. So I'll try to take you through how my ideas have changed. We've heard this before, but we have a history that goes roughly, of course, simplified. Braidwood was a pretty cool guy, had some cool ideas about fire. Layman came, really gathered a lot of information, did a lot of research, really started understanding the value of droplets, how indirect attack, and how we can use steam as a suppressant agent if we just produce enough, like Ricardo say. And then in Sweden we have Christer Gises and Mats Rosander to add it to that and said, well, we need to understand fire even better. Anti-ventilation is old, but we need to improve it in terms of how we do it on the fire ground. And we start getting the modern version of the European method, which is smoke cooling with a fog nozzle, for instance. And that, of course, just came from the theory that a 0.3 millimeter droplet, the Germans, it's always the Germans that did some math, and they said, they found the calculation that if you have a droplet of that size, it travels through a smoke layer of a certain temperature. It's roughly, it seems like a good droplet size to make it absorb a lot of energy, but not be too big to go through it. So to be efficient, we need a 0.3 droplet. And Mats Rosander and Christer Gises adopted that, but they couldn't find a fog nozzle that really could produce 0.3 millimeter droplets. So they assisted in building the fog fighter, which was not only their vision of 0.3 millimeter droplet, which is a simplification, but also about the distance between the droplets. I mean, the droplets are too far away, they're not going to work. And then we tried, like explaining that to students, for instance, with a mesh. If the mesh has two big holes in the metal wire, it's not going to work. It has to be a certain distance between it. The flame can't go through it. So that was the idea. If we just take a 3D mesh, we get a fog nozzle. That should be efficient. That should be very good for us to absorbing the energy from the smoke, the energy from the flames, and do our job safer. This is from '89. This is Anders Bagan Laurén. He was one of the first instructors that went around and ruled the world. The baker. He was a pretty aggressive guy. We're going to see that. So he runs in, and maybe... And that's how you do it. It's very easy. No, I'm just going to listen to that one more time. And we're going to have some audio on that one, hopefully.
You can hear those short pulsations. You can't see them, but you can hear them. So that was the short pulsations, and he was one of the instructors that really put forward this. It was not Metro Sandvik Christer. They only did long pulses. So if you want to blame someone for the short pulse, it's Anders Bagan Laren. But anyway, we can see that, and sometimes in America they ask, we're aggressive, and go like, that's pretty aggressive too. we're also pretty aggressive. I'm borderline stupid. But that was to prove like it worked. Like you didn't need a lot of water to suppress that hallway and advance into the compartment and do some extinguishment. So you really put forward like you don't need a lot of water. And of course we got like modern smoke cooling, if you want to call it that, where we're a little bit more cautious, but we train our firefighters. There's a smoke layer. The smoke layer starts to build up, and we put a little bit of steam up there, put a little bit of cooling, a little bit of steam, and hopefully it doesn't ignite, so we can advance into that room and do suppression, whatever it is, from a house burn. Now, of course, most times when we're at a fire, we don't have a nice smoke layer, which is the visual thing we have left. We maybe don't see anything. The firefighter sitting in the hallway, do a little bit of cooling. It's from training. It's not an instructional video. It's just I document when I, for instance, do acquired structure burns. They do a little bit of cooling. They take down the temperature. Make it not flammable. And then they start to advance. It starts to come back. They do a little bit more cooling. And it starts to come back, but they advance and they do a little bit of more cooling until they end up in the fire compartment when they cool off the gases in there. And if you would look at the floor after that, there wouldn't be much, much water on the floor, but highly efficient to accomplish the task of not making the smoke layer ignite, advancing into the fire compartment. Again, firefighter enters, just a normal firefighter, normal from training. They enter, they don't really know how bad it is. They can't really tell if it's going better or worse, but at least they know that they should cool. They're trying to cool. You can debate all you like. Should it be longer pulse or shorter? The distance, the flow. It's getting a little bit worse, but they're cooling enough so that they can advance. They're cooling and getting to the door, and they're going to enter through that door and get some water into the fire compartment. If you ask them, they would have absolutely said they achieved the objective. They were able to advance to the fire compartment. They made sure that the smoke did not ignite when they were inside. And they got to the fire compartment, no water on the floor, very little water on the floor. Efficient firefighting, if you want to call it that. We also learned that droplets are super efficient. This is the cold cut system. 20 years ago it started in Sweden. That's a big barn, 3 windows open, and that's 60 liters per minute, flowing for about 30 seconds. That builds enough steam to fit in your equation to make it non-combustible. Imagine how theory and practice sometimes line up, just sometimes. And sometimes, well, if you're really theoretical, like it's the world that's wrong. It's my theory is right. It seems like it. But I'm gonna make it fit, and that's what we do sometimes. But anyway, so we absolutely know that small droplets are really efficient. Like it can absorb an enormous amount of energy, make it into steam. The steam further suppress it by making it less combustible. You have to heat the flame. You have to heat all that steam to flame temperature, and that takes tremendous amount of energy. It's just cooling it. I mean, the other word for nerding is just more cooling. Ask Sarkist. Where is he? No, he's gone home. The fire triangle is bullshit. It's all about the heat. That's the thing. Which is sort of true, or not, depending on which model do you want to use. But anyway, so we know that's very, very, very efficient. There's no doubt about it. And we also know that we can use our nozzle, our fog nozzle. We have attack the fire here in this compartment. The student here, or the fire department doing the burn, teach them about hydraulic ventilation. Now, the firefighter here stands very close to the windows over here. Much more efficient if you back off. But they achieved the objective of quickly making a negative pressure behind the firefighter, dragging everything out, making the path towards that fire compartment better and so on. So we've been teaching firefighters for a long time also about hydraulic ventilation. It's like a fantastic tool. Fantastic tool on the fire ground. A lot of times much better than the fan, for instance, for tactical reasons maybe. And then of course we have straight streams, which are useless. They're absolutely useless. They're absolutely useless. You can't. And this is a demonstration I do with the firefighters I train. They go like, well, because what United States really did not understand for a long time was the 3D phenomena. Like it's a gas, and to be able to extinguish the gas, you need distribution through the gases. You can't just have a small point with a lot of water. You can't just have, in this case, it's just a metal nail. If I take a nail, you see the fire goes around it. Still, I mean, it cools here, but it's the distance between. You have to have a lot of nails. You may take it into mesh, it works better. And I've gone around. I've taught a lot of Americans how stupid they are. And this is where it gets stodgy then. So we teach our firefighters how gas cooling works by doing this. So the first time, when I became a firefighter a couple of years ago, I started realizing, like, during my training, nobody said anything about firefighting in a bigger box than a container, basically. So if you move into this environment, like a big storage facility, you see that you got 150 degrees in ceiling. Ignore the fact that we can't measure temperature with a tick, but we got a high heat in the ceiling. We need to cool that somehow, and then we have firefighters going inside going pss, 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 with a fog nozzle. Or maybe they do a long pulse, but like, I can't throw droplets that up efficiently and so on. So we had this problem. I realized that my fire instructor said to me, like, Lars, here's a container, here's a small fire. Oh, you're great, and then good luck. And I know that you've been pretty much taught the same thing. Like there's nobody go like, yeah, this is how you do it interiorly. Like this is how you use your nozzle. Just like we had this idea that if we teach firefighters in small containers, they'll figure it out when they get to the scene. And magically they don't. Like they just don't. The other one I, of course, realized was I was taught like the cues. You see pockets of flames in the ceiling. You see, turbulence increasing. You see all the things we see in a container. I go like, every acquired structure fire I go to, I can't see anything. Like I can't. It just go from black, 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 orange, 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 orange. Like that's. It's just go like. It just makes it more complicated, right? So you just, because we came from, and that was Krista Gieses and Matt Rosanna said that, like they to use the correct terminology, I don't like the fucking scientist fire, because you can see everything. Because all the firefighters, when you teach firefighters about flashover, for instance, you teach them about a flashover they will never see, which is like the fuel lean, they call it, Matt Rosanna and Krista Gieses. It came from being a fuel control fire. You see the surface is pyrolyzing and blah, 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 blah. That's not the thing they see. You go into a zero visibility environment and it goes black, 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 orange. And how do you know? Well, the tick was a pretty good indicator that this is getting worse. Like the tick is a phenomenal tool. Got lots of problems, but it's a phenomenal tool. But I realized like we have a disconnect here also when we do training. Like that's not the environment that our firefighters are looking for. They don't have that nice smoke layer. Like. Never. Like, yeah, I've been to fires where there actually was a smoke layer, but that's not the norm. And when I go around the world, and especially like Sweden and Norway, I look at firefighters with a nozzle, and this is not someone trying to do straight stream gas cooling. This is just someone who has the idea. You should go in and smoke cool. They can't see their nozzle. They don't know their nozzle. They don't see the outcome of their stream. And they go out and like they guess a little bit. A little bit here. A little bit here. Is it enough? Like a little bit here. But that's, I mean, you're laughing because you go like, yeah, let's look at what it is. And I don't know if we're pretending to be like, yeah, everybody seems to know how you deal with like what's enough cooling and so on. So maybe just me being stupid. But that's not how it works. Most people have no idea. And that's not strange. I mean, I have no idea. Like, how do you judge enough? Like, well, if it's not burning, maybe that's enough. That was one of the cues, but it's a pretty late cue. Go like, yeah, now it burns. So now I needed to have cooled, 10 minutes ahead or 2 seconds ahead. So then we do like this. We do small scale exercises like this. We look at, well, what happens if I do a spray and I have fire? Can I drag fire towards me? Well, yeah. It's just particles that go up by buoyancy, and if I create a lower pressure somewhere, you will have fire or smoke or whatever it might be flowing towards you. And go like so that seems pretty important, or not. So when we do, for instance, a fog inside a space, we of course add, I mean, to hydraulic view, we're hydraulically ventilating inside this box now. So we're hydraulically ventilating. We're pulling air in through the stream, and that's a negative pressure behind it. We know that, and it is a positive pressure in front of it. That's why we push stuff around when we hydraulically ventilate. So that will cause this compartment to mix. Now, usually that doesn't matter, maybe. I mean, it's nobody in there besides us, and we are protected, and things just go everywhere. And if you do a short one, it's a very little mix, but if you do a long one, it's a lot of mix. But generally, we don't see anything, so we don't even pay attention to this happening because, again, we can't see anything. So we go like and do like a little bit here, a little bit of here, and it seems to work. So now we have the whole new era of transitional attack. So if we do that with a fog, this is, again, just firefighters playing, and I record it. Not necessarily this how you should do it. You don't should follow that long. But obviously, if you have a fog here, even if we put it close to the window, that would hydraulically vent in one direction. If there is an outlet over here, we will push whatever we push in that direction. So we hydraulically ventilate in that. Most of the times, it maybe doesn't matter. Most of the time, we don't even pay attention to it, which I think is the main problem. You don't know what you look for if you don't know what to look for. So we hydraulically vent inside that one. And that's not really strange. You hydraulically vent into the compartment. That mixes everything. Good suppression. And then you put stuff out another way. It's just you create a higher pressure, and there's a lower pressure, in that case, into the window on the other side. So we take a straight stream, and that breaks up into a fog. If the straight stream is not very solid, it breaks up to a fog, and we push everything out, in that case, to the staircase. South Korea. Oh, perfect, love it. Doing research here. I mean, it's very obvious. Again, you're hydraulically ventilating into the compartment. If there's an opening, in that case, out in the staircase, it's going to say, woof, somebody's going to go, don't do that again. When we have 40 years of tradition, of, what do you call it, 40 years of tradition unimpeded by progress, or whatever, yeah. And you go like, don't do that, which is like understandable, like, don't do that. Now, we got the Cobra 20 years ago, and this is from a real fire. So what happens if that room up there is closed? Like, there is another window somewhere. Like, is that a rocket ship? Is that a jet fuel? Is that... So obviously we are doing the same thing. We're hydraulically ventilating, but now we're hydraulically ventilating into a closed compartment. And when you build pressure inside that room, that pressure will not stay in that room. It will come back. The only way it could come back in the same. So how easy is it to get those small water droplets into a high pressure zone? Well, no. But oxygen is pretty good to get sneaky past. So you get a big fire and no suppression. Like, well, yes, you hydraulically vent into a closed space. Seems to be pretty important also. It's the Germans. So they're doing a public demonstration. You can think about if it was a good or bad demonstration. They open the door, they pulse, because that's what we've been taught, to cool flames, cool gases. They pulse a little bit more, maybe a long pulse now, because they're seeing that it doesn't have an effect. And when that doesn't have an effect, well, the only choice they have is to go to full fog and just continues to flow. And it's the same engine we had in Norway. Somebody snuck a jet engine in there. Now, first off, was this a good demonstration or a bad one? It's excellent, because the public is going to go like they're heroes. Let's give them more money, and job. In terms of actual firefighter behavior, maybe not the best one. So we have this, but the thing is, like, if I take this, if I put a box around those German firefighters on the outside, they're in the hallway now, and you got flames coming out of the bedroom in front of you, and it's a good rocking fire, and you open the nozzle, and you go like, oh yeah, this is a long burst of water here. You're hydraulically ventilating into that compartment. Now, if you do it short, maybe nothing happens. You just twirling it around. But if you open it for full flow, it's probably not a good thing. And I think it's interesting, because I know there's a lot of people sitting here right now who go like, I did not think about that. I did not think about that. Because I didn't. And I've taught firefighters about hydraulic ventilation, and when I move into the hallway, that knowledge was gone. I forgot about that. Very bizarre. And you go like, well, is it important? Well, it probably is. Like, if you've been chased out of an apartment out into the hall, at the staircase, and that was a closed compartment, that shouldn't have been a pretty big fire. But you maybe made it big. So then, what's the answer? So we do short pulse. So if we do a long pulse with a fog, we get a lot of air entrainment. So we do short pulses, like Bogarn, like the baker. He did short pulses, because he knew that if you do a long pulse, you mix a lot of things. And he did short pulses, because that didn't get the air entrainment engine going in the same way. So we teach short pulses. And so we have firefighters sitting here and doing short pulses. So how long is the effect of the short pulse? How long does it last? Very effective at creating a safe space, right? Not at all. It's like half a second, that effect is gone. Why did the baker have to run in? Because if he didn't run, he didn't place the next little short fog in front of the other. If he did up with a tick, oh, that didn't improve. That didn't improve.
He was very dynamic. We are very static.
Yeah. And I would say he could run in because he was half crazy, but also he knew that structure. It was like sort of a part of it. Like when you go to a fire, you go like, yeah, I'll hope I run in the right direction. So we can't, we shouldn't run, of course. We should crawl in and have situational awareness. But if we do short pulses, for instance, we have to be very careful because we know that the effect might be very limited. Even if you do door control, there's continuous circulation within the compartment. So you continuously have a flow going over your head if you're in the flow path. I have no idea about time.
You have another 15 minutes.
15, I'm not even half. Okay. So this is another acquired structure burn we did. These firefighters here are gonna open the door to the fire compartment. They're gonna do a short pulse above their head. You're gonna see it twirls around a little bit. And then all of a sudden you're gonna see like a woof. And when I was sitting there with the camera, I go like, ooh, I did not anticipate that. It's no danger. You'd go like, it would like good visibility to like shit. And that's, well, it was like, what the, because I thought I thought it was a small poof. They call it poof fire, when it goes like poof. So I thought it was a poof fire. I don't know, it could be a small smoke explosion, but that's what I thought. Like that was interesting. I want to see the other videos. So, but I want to pay attention here. You're gonna see here, and you're gonna see here what really happens when I play this video. Do a short pulse over the head. But now you're gonna see here, over there. That was another instructor sitting far behind the hallway. They did a short pulse of water, but now it wasn't up in the ceiling, because up in the ceiling there's a resistance, so you don't push anything really. But they came from the side, and that pushed everything in front of it. Like whatever smoke was outside of that door just pushed into my compartment, which went from pretty nice to, it's not a problem because I had BA, but it would be nice if I had understood those things. Like again, if I go inside this compartment, there's a constant mixing going on here. There is an overpressure in front of that stream. You can make it short, but it's still going to be a push, or you can make it long, and it's going to be this massive turning. Which is the reason why the Cobra works. Like if you look at here, there's going to be a Cobra here and a fog nail here. That's a massive amounts of stirring power. It hydraulically vents that room, meaning that there is no droplet. Like if you read the books, there's theory about droplets, that they travel with air currents and put out fire. That's like sort of bullshit. Droplets don't go anywhere. Generally, that's what you think. They might do, but generally, droplets don't go anywhere for suppression. What happens is that the more you can stir around this room, the more all the smoke travels back into the stream, because you hydraulically ventilate inside that space. And with the Cobra, you can hydraulically vent a huge space. Even with a fog nail, with low pressure, you can ventilate a fairly good space. Like there's a room in here. You know, a Cobra in here would be nothing to handle most fires that can be in here. You can see that by just looking. Look at that heavy lamp on the ceiling. That actually turning, that's a fairly heavy lamp. That's just by the sheer force of the turbulation caused by that one. You don't see nearly as much with the fog nail because of pressure. It doesn't produce enough drag. So I went to America, and I said, Smoothbore sucks. And they said, okay, and gave me some sweet tea. And then they showed me like, so this is bad? And I go like, yeah. or? Because the first, they showed me videos like, this works. And I was like, no. Because my theory says it doesn't work, and I need to fit my reality into my theory. So I'll say it doesn't work. Yeah. And problem solved. Like, that's not a problem. But of course, the transitional study came along, and of course, I had to play then, so I burned houses. I try to burn houses as much as I can. And when you go like a 5-second stream into a window of a fully developed fire on the second floor, and we know, of course, from data, you go like 5 seconds with a straight stream up in the ceiling. That should be a puddle in the like wet spot in the ceiling, and like a puddle on the floor, nothing else. Absolutely useless, but it's not. Which was a game changer, because water doesn't know where it comes from. So if you're flowing water from the outside and you don't think it works in the hallway, you're fitting the reality into your theoretical model. That's just what it is. Now, I struggled a long time, like, why does it work? So, and I still do, don't get me wrong, I don't know. Like, if you ask Steve or Keith, they go like, yeah, we think we know, we're not going to tell you. Because we're evil. No, 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 but it's like we haven't really figured it out yet. We have theories, we have, like thoughts, and that's all I have too. I just have thoughts. So we have this model where we hydraulically vent inside, you get turbulation in there, and we vent it out the other compartment. Again, and then we have the model of we hydraulically vent into a closed compartment that will come back. Now, the difference here is if I put a straight stream in, that's where the fog is created. So we have two things. I mean, when I first talked to Steve, I know a couple of years ago, and said, why does transition attack work? It's because you're cooling the linings. Like, that is much more important than we think. And I think that's a hugely important part of it. You're flushing water down the linings. But I look at thermal imagers from the entire smoothbore mafia. And I go like, it looks cool. It looks different. So, but if there is a stream, and you look at the videos, there's a fog created here. So if you look at that one, that's where the fog starts. That's where the high pressure is. That's where low pressure is. That causes stirring inside the space. That causes all the hot gases passing through that fog. So you get gas cooling too. So you get surface cooling and gas cooling. I mean, obviously it works. We have tons of data on it, and people are starting doing it, and people are like, yeah, this is awesome. Why we didn't do this all the time? So this is from Szymon, our Polish friend. He sent me this just to show, well, if you whip it around like a smoothbore, that's it. Just by, I don't know, because there's no research on this, there's no data, but that's looked like a lot of good droplets. Like if I wanted to throw droplets of really long distance with a smooth for a large scale, I mean, that looks pretty good. You'd have to whip it around because it's the air resistant that breaks up the droplets. It's like when it hits the air, it goes like poof. And we got research on that. Maybe not the boof sound, but the actual explosion in miniature. So if you look at that, so we take this from Jeni Bond. This is a great guy on Facebook. He was happily sent it to me to show why we're stupid. Because we are. And I mean stupid in that way. It should go like we're ignorant and biased, like every human being is. So this is what you look at visually. Well, this you see thermal imagery. What you look, you're going to see a stream hitting the ceiling, and look at what happens with the flow. We're starting here. As soon as that stream hits the ceiling, it's pushed backwards, like it's pushed in that direction. And then they put the stream to the opening. It burst out again. Then they put the stream to the opening again. It kind of goes like it looks like there's nothing coming out of that room. You go like, that's interesting. Like, why would it put it in the ceiling and it just pushes everything back? Or like, I'm intrigued. I'm curious. And you look at like how they teach, like the Nozzle advance. So you see here, they're moving, they're flowing constantly, moving around into the ceiling, into the walls. Different philosophies. You all should flush the ground to get hot water off and so on. You can have a whole debate about like the optimal one, but they're like sort of like this. Like it could be not scientific enough, but sort of like this. And just like Keith spoke about, like they hit obstacles and door sills, and every time it hits an obstacle, a roof, and everything, it breaks up into droplets. But it breaks up not where you are, it breaks up over here maybe. That's where it breaks up and causes a negative pressure in that moment right there, and causes negative pressure here. Not that those are small, it's like chaotic over here, over here, over here, over here. I mean, all that causes stirring, but it causes stirring in front of you, where it's hotter, which also, of course, when you gas cool in front of you, you cause negative contraction of gases. But it's in front of you. It doesn't come to you. But like, I'm intrigued. So this is a hallway. It's not that hallway, but that's the hallway. It goes left into a fire compartment. There's a small outlet like this size. And you see that stream come in the ceiling? Look at that flow. Where did that flow go? You turn it around, comes back, moves the stream to that position. It's gone. It doesn't come back. I'm further intrigued. Because when you talk to a European firefighter, our measurement of success of gas cooling was it did not ignite and there was no water on the floor. I mean, those are very good things. Like, I'm fairly happy with those. But if you could say, another version is that, well, you got more water on the floor, but all the flow is going in front of you. Like, it's going in or out of the direction. Because it's not coming at you. It's not going to where people want to save. It's going that direction. I go like, yeah, I go like, if I'm not worried about the water on the floor, I would just like to go like that. That feels better. I just like, that seems reasonable to think. So go like, does it only work in hallways? Well, this is a little bit bigger space. You fire coming from the left, that's the firefighters. Now it's like a small living room. You see the flow coming from the fire compartment here. It turns towards the firefighters, it's on the left. We're gonna see, I'm sorry about the shaky picture. Jay, fix it next time. No, also, it's fantastic videos. Stream goes in the ceiling. As soon as you get the angle right, it just pushes everything in front of you. That's that flow coming in the ceiling. And they advance around that corner and put some water on it. It looks nice. You go like, I'm further intrigued. So we have this. If it's a single space, this is, I think, what's happening. We have, of course, good cooling. I'm not saying that gas cooling doesn't work. I'm not saying that gas cooling is not efficient. Obviously it is. But you mix a lot of stuff. It's hydraulic ventilation. Now this, I think, is also hydraulic ventilation, but we do it way less than ahead of us, where there's more heat, which means more contraction of gases. Now this makes even more sense if we are going from the hallway to the bedroom, because now we're taking volume, air volume, and push it into a closed compartment that will come back. But if I put a straight stream to him, just like a transitional attack, I will get circulation in here. How much, I don't know exactly, but I don't get that feedback. I'm over time?
Not yet. We have a couple of minutes left.
Yes, but that's perfect. I was pretty good at assessing this last night at 1 o'clock. So we want to achieve perfection. And coming from Sweden, that's what I want to do. I want to achieve perfection. You know, the reason I became a fire nerd wasn't because, like, you know, it sounds fun to look at graphs. I just said, well, I just want to have perfection. Like, I want to be good. And if we want to achieve perfection, there's a goal of any action will vary with the situation. Like, I'm taking task goals. Like, why do I place my water here? Why do I place my water here? And if the goal is less water damages, now efficiency, of course, is very important. If the goal is rescue, I don't care maybe at water damages. The goal varies with the situation. So that's one factor. And then we have the next one. There's a perfect tool for every goal. Like, if you were to do all the research, there's a perfect tool to achieve that particular goal. Like I said, now firefighters in Sweden are buying trucks with every tool you can imagine. There's a Cobra, there's a calf system, there's fog nails, different kind of nozzles, and go like, I will choose the optimal tool for the optimal one. And there's an optimal technique for every tool. If you have a fog nozzle, you can use it in a million different ways. Like I said, there's an optimal technique to achieve that particular goal. And that's Sweden, the land of unicorns, where hopes and dreams are possible. But it's not reality, right? It's not reality. So we have somewhere to go, like what is good enough, or how do you achieve good enough? And I hate to say that. Like I almost feel physically sad when I say good enough. That's what my fire chief always told me. Oh, Lars, it's good enough. I go like, I want to punch you in the face. Like, I want to have. Why don't you say, like, Ed's fire department, we want to be the best fire service in the world. Now that always has a like, it has a cost, but that's our goal. Like, that's our vision. Of course, it's going to have that vision. You can't. I mean, it's impossible, but that's the vision. And then we have problems. You don't know if smoke is flammable or not. You just don't know. So take that variable out of the equation. All smoke is flammable. Most firefighters are not good with their nozzle. I think that was one of the things that when I started traveling around, I just thought it was my firefighters that sucked. I just thought I need to be a better student. I need to be a better instructor. I need to like motivate them better to train and so on. And I go around the world and go like, everybody goes and say, Lars, we need to train better. Our firefighters suck. Because they don't train with their nozzle. Like they don't know how to use it. I go like, okay, there seems to be a correlation here. Everybody's either stupid and bad, or there's something wrong with the theory model of theory we have. Like this unicorn we're chasing here. Water damage is a small problem in many situations, especially compared to achieving effectiveness in firefighter safety. Now, in my context, I've been heavily ingrained about water damage, and it is heavily ingrained in the Swedish Fire Service. It's a badge of honor, it's something achieved, not water on the floor and so on. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Of course we should reduce water damages, of course. To the price of what? That is the question, right? What's the cost of doing that? If you get enough water in the right room, in most cases, it doesn't matter much in what form it is to achieve suppression. Like we know from studies, and we know from the Cobra, they put a straight stream in, put a fog inside that space and whatever. In most cases, it just goes out. So what's the problem with that? Well, it means good, but it's also a problem that pretty much all we do inside a room is going to be effective. Like get some water in there and it probably will go out, like it's in residential. Lack of ignition of the smoke is not the only possible outcome. That's all I looked for. Like how can I not can I make the advance, not everything igniting, and there's no water in the floor, and I thought that was the only valid tool I could measure my performance. And I look at how you can direct flows and everything, I start to gear my head or go like, no, that's not good enough. I push stuff somewhere and I drag something somewhere, and I think that makes a lot of sense to try to achieve that, to make it better for me. Less cancerous smoke and so on. Most fire trucks contain enough water for several minutes of continuous flow. That's the one other thing I always get. Like, oh, we can't do American style. Like, well, we could never do that. We only have 2,000 liters of water, or 4,000 liters, or 3,000 liters of water. Like, that's 4 minutes of continuous flow, flowing 500 liters per minute. I'm not saying you need 500 liters per minute, but I'm saying that's a lot of time for like an apartment. So what are my beliefs? Like, what's my conclusions? The easiest to train form of interior firefighting is done with straight streams. It has problems too. There's no doubt in my mind. If you have 2 hours to train your firefighters, I would definitely go with a straight stream. Definitely. Does that have problems? Absolutely. But it works. If you don't think it works, read more data. Like, change your theory. Because it clearly works. I'm not saying it works all the time. You have all these problems with false ceilings. What happens if the ceiling goes? Well, you have to bounce it off the surfaces. What happens if it's a sloped ceiling? Well, the stream goes that way. Is that necessarily for cooling? What happens if I don't have a surface? Well, now you're really going to go to fog with a... There's multiple problems. I'm not saying there isn't problems. This is not the new unicorn. Like, we can just throw people in there. Fog streams may be added for increased efficiency if more training is provided. You need more training. But many times the training required to add or maintain skills for fog cooling is better used elsewhere. I went to, for instance, the firefighters in Oslo. They live in a wooden city, old wooden construction. Water damage is a huge concern. If they produce a lot of water damage on the 8th floor, they have damage. I'm over time, right?
You are.
Are you angry? Are you angry? You look angry.
Even if I'm saying it wasn't good.
Yeah. You look angry. But, well, maybe you just thought about the budget. So, that would make sense. I'm not saying that fog is bad. Not at all. I say that there are a lot of things. When I was taught fog, I was taught this is the holy grail. Use it. Okay, sure, you need to track a little bit, but there's like no downside. Like there's serious downsides. We need to teach those if we're not supposed to have problems. And I think what really showed the last couple of years is the value of coordination, tactical decisions, communication, like making those decisions both on a tactical level and as a firefighter. Should I did this door or that door, or should I advance here or there? I read to learn the tech to be able to advance quickly to fire. There are multitude of skills that I think will have much more impact on the value we provide to citizens and the safety of firefighters than being, for instance, really good at fog. Now, to answer some fears, the baby goes out with the bathwater. Most CFBT programs contain much more than just cooling smoke with fog, but that is a big takeaway. Like, if people go from many fog programs, like, oh, it's like gas cooling stuff. Like, I know we're teaching fire behavior and everything else, but it's a serious concern of mine. Go like, okay, now we're going to throw out everything because fog was not the answer. I'm not saying that fog is not the answer, but again, my belief. That's a real concern. Like most CFBT programs is 95% not about the actual fog cooling. Or should be. Or the perceived value of small droplets is lost. I talk to, I hear you, surface cooling versus gas cooling. Like I don't like that. Because with straight streams, you're doing gas cooling. You're doing surface cooling too, but you're doing surface cooling also with a fog if you throw water on the surfaces. Like there's a disconnect between how you achieve something like a fog and the ultimate goal, right? So I mean, surface cooling is still highly important. I think we forgot a lot about that here. But gas cooling, I think it's just another way of achieving that gas cooling with that. And it's still small droplets have a huge value. If nothing else for external attacks like piercing nozzles and Cobras and everything. It's a huge value. If you want to contact me, that's where I am. Oh, you look happy now when I'm done. Like,